Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in Sophomore English. We turn in our comparative analysis study in unit number 4, Poetics unit. I'm with you on page 703. We're going to look at Gwendolyn Brooks' The Beaneaters. Just to remind, we're going to be concentrating on comparing tone and mood. I'm with you on page 700. Remember, the tone is the author's attitude towards the reader or the subject of the work. The mood is the atmosphere, right? A general unified feeling conveyed by the details of a literary work. Now, we've already looked at Gabriel Mistral's Fear, and now we're going to turn to Gwendolyn Brooks' The Beaneaters as we start to think about how do these two titles compare in terms of tone and mood. Before we get there at 3A, that obviously is a 3A question, isn't it? Let's introduce ourselves to Brooks really quickly. Notice dates, 1917 to 2000. She began writing poetry at the age of 7. Encouraged by her family, she published her first poem at 13. In 1950, Brooks became the first African-American writer to win a Pulitzer Prize. She's one of the most admired American poets of the 20th century, without question. One of the things that makes her poetry so profound is how simple it is, and yet how complex it is. Let's take a look at the Beaneaters, and we'll just now read the poem, and then we'll come back to work at levels 1, 2, and 3 on this one, all right? All right, here we go.
The Beaneaters by Gwendolyn Brooks. They eat beans mostly, this old yellow pair. Dinner is a casual affair. Plain chipware on a plain and creaking wood, tin flatware. Two who are mostly good. Two who have lived their day, but keep on putting on their clothes and putting things away. And remembering with twinklings and twinges, as they lean over the beans in the rented back room that is full of beads and receipts and dowels and cloths, tobacco crumbs, faces and fringes.
It's a typical Gwendolyn Brooks poem in 3 ways. Let's just write it down quickly. 1, very simple poem. I've had students that say, okay, finally I'm to a poem that's simple and I can understand it in every way. 2, and yet it moves from the simple to the complex because Gwendolyn Brooks, typical of her poetry, loves to say things without actually coming right out and saying those things. Finally, 3, the tone and the mood of this poem remain controversial. All because we are back to the vague antecedent in our study of pronouns. The first word of this poem is a pronoun. Hey, by the way, do you think they deserve to be shot? Whoa, they who? What are you talking about, deserve to be shot? They who? You know I'm talking about a thing, you just don't know who the they is I'm talking about. What is the antecedent to the pronoun they? Tell me what that is, and then we can make our discussion about it. If I'm a rancher, for example, living somewhere in Yellowstone, maybe close to Yellowstone, I feel wolves should be shot. Now all of a sudden I know what the antecedent is and we can have the conversation. Notice the first word of this poem. They eat beans, mostly. This old yellow pear. And all of a sudden, right away, in the opening line, we've got several interesting things happening. They eat beans, mostly. This old yellow pear suggests we've got an old couple, and they eat beans. Now, eating beans is symbolic. Notice the Beaneaters, the title of the poem. Symbolic of what? Socioeconomic poverty. We might say they're old, they don't have a lot to eat. And so they eat. Dinner is a casual affair. Listen to all that air sounds. Notice affair, chipware, flatware. Do you see it? Right? All those sounds that are going to work almost like a gong. Dinner's a casual affair. In other words, they don't get ramped up for their dinners anymore. Plain chipware on a plain and creaking wood. Notice the repetitions of plain, creaking. That adjective gives a sense as well of what already is kind of maybe missing here for these guys. Plain chipware on a plain and creaking wood, tin flatware, and then we break, the stanza break. Two who are mostly good. Did you notice the capital M, capital G? Did you see it? Mostly good. Two who have lived their day. What do you want to say about that at level 1? A couple of people who are now in the final third of their life, but keep on putting on their clothes and putting things away. In other words, Even though they're old, they still live with their rhythms, don't they? The rhythms of the day. They still have them, but clearly they're not what they once were. And, third stanza, remembering ... Notice the ellipsis is powerful, right? Because what does it tell us? This is really a poem not about eating beans, but a poem about the struggle to grow old. And when you grow old, and now you eat beans, maybe, for example, beans are a very plain kind of cuisine, as opposed to really spicy food, because maybe they're old and it bothers their tummies if they eat really spicy food. But what do they do really when they're eating their beans? Well, they're remembering. Notice the ellipsis. Then the next line, line 10, remembering with twinklings and twinges. In other words, sometimes they're happy of their memories. Sometimes they're like, oh, with their memories. As they lean over the beans in their rented back room. Notice they don't own the room. It's rented. That is full of beads and receipts and dolls and cloths, tobacco crumbs, vases and fringes. In other words, they now live in like a back space. Socioeconomically, notice she doesn't come right out and tell us who these people are, but you can tell these are not wealthy millionaires, yes? Of course, if I say that, how can you tell these are not wealthy millionaires? Well, they're eating beans. What, millionaires can't eat beans? Well, no, there's a lot more going on here, though. Notice where they are. They're kind of in the back area. They're among a whole bunch of other things that no longer anybody really cares about. In other words, this is a poem about growing old. This is a poem about losing things. This is a poem about trying to reclaim things, remembering things. Let's jump to level 1 really quickly. What's a major message here? It's hard. It's hard to begin to kind of get a sense that everything is passing you by. What'll it be like in 20 years when you're 40? In 20 years, you're 20 years away from retirement. Whoa! And it's done. You've done this thing called your adult work experience, and then all of a sudden you start thinking about retirement, and everyone's kind of, passing you by. A sophomore the other day making fun of an old-timer who had picked up a smartphone and didn't know how to use it. And yet we know this is coming for all of us. There will be a moment when some young person will look at you and say, what was it like way back in 2019? Dude, you come from the dark ages. And you'll be like, what are you dark? What are you talking about? This is the nature of it, right? Another way to say this at 2A, another major message is, everything comes full circle. Everything goes this way. That's the nature of it. And you have to kind of learn to grow accustomed to it. Life is all about remembering, another major message, both the good things, the twinklings, as well as the bad things, the twinges, the stuff that makes us unhappy and sad as well. At 2B, now let's turn to it. What is the mood? What is the tone of this poem? If the mood or the tone of fear is a mood of anxiety, worry, what is the mood or the tone here? Some students have used the adjective of resignation, to be resigned, to kind of say, you know what, this is the way things are. And you kind of have to just learn to get along with it, because this is what happens. If you don't die young, you grow old. And if you grow old, you have to kind of live this life. This is what inevitably is coming for all. Some have seen this mood as melancholy. Notice some of the word choices, the receipts and dolls and cloths, tobacco crumbs, vases, fringes. Fringes, of course, rhyming with twinges. In other words, you become increasingly forgotten. And what's that like? What is for you at 3A, the text that plays into this game, that shows people who live on the peripheral? They might be a little bit older. They might now starting to be neglected and not so well a part of the center of society anymore. Is there a text for you that brings that to mind? By the way, go ahead and write down the Odyssey, because this is exactly what Odysseus is worried about when he arrives back in Ithaca to see his wife. And Athena says as much. I know what you're worried about. You're worried that you've gotten old and Penelope's gotten old, and you're worried that maybe the two of you can't be pals anymore because you're so distant and separated from each other. Finally, at 3A, 2 questions. Do you already recognize that the people in your life who are older are in fact starting to feel more alienated and isolated? And question number 2, what will that be like? What will that be like for you to watch the people you care about grow old? What will that be like the day you have to walk up to the parent in your life and say, I love you, but give me the keys. I can't have you driving anymore. You want to go somewhere, I'll take you there. Give me the keys now. I've had sophomores that say, oh, no, no, no. I live with people. They ain't no way they'll ever allow that to happen. No, no. This poem says it. It's going to happen. If they stay alive long enough, they're going to have to be taken care of. And guess what? That's you. That's you who have to take care of them. Of course, the other question is, what is it like to get older? Already as sophomores, you're starting to look at 7th graders differently than you did when you were in 7th grade, 8th grade. You're starting to already see them as kind of childlike and loud. What will it be like in 24 months when you're in your senior year and you're looking back at sophomores? The aging process, the ways that we either understand or don't understand that experience, the ways in which we remember. Will you have these experiences in your senior year? Will you remember your senior year or your high school career with twinklings and with twinges? What's the most happy thing you've done through high school to this point? And what's the thing you've done that makes you twinge, go, oh man, I wish I hadn't done that? Well, there you go, Gwendolyn Brooks. I hope it leads you to want to read more works by Gwendolyn Brooks. Thank you.